Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to Big Apple Blitz. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how you doing, my friend?
I wish that we were meeting today under happier circumstances, but unfortunate reality is that both of the New York Giants and New York Jets seasons look like they're being flushed down the toilet today. I mean, brutal losses for both teams on Sunday. One on primetime makes it so much worse, but yeah, just a rough Sunday. Not what you wanted to see. Wanted a victory Monday. Unfortunate reality.
Yeah, very unfortunate reality. The state of New York football is I don't know when it's gonna get better. Like that's where I'm at. I'm so down bad right now, and it was doubly bad. We were talking right before we started because I'm a Jets and Mets fan, so I watched both my two of my favorite team seasons and essentially 10 minutes apart. Mets different, like they had no expectations, way overachieved. Proud of how that team fought, but still sad to see it come to an end. Jets, ton of expectations, and maybe just the most mentally soft team I've ever seen. They cannot get through any adversity whatsoever. They're leading 15. I think this is where we start. The turning point of the game was in the second quarter at the end, 2 minutes of the half. They're up 15-6. They have the ball. They're driving, and Aaron Rodgers throws an interception, and the Steelers go down and get a touchdown to make it a 15-13 game. So instead of being up by at minimum 9, if you go down and get a field goal, you're up 12 at that point. Or if you go up and God forbid get a touchdown, you're up 22-6 and getting the ball to start the second half. And it just goes completely off the rails. The Steelers score 31 unanswered points on this team in essentially a half. They just quit. This team just flat out quit last night on national television in front of everyone. And Rodgers goes to the podium and was like, yeah, the vibe of the team, everyone felt down before the start of the game and at halftime. How does that happen in a must-win game? Like, I don't know what to say anymore. And I know that's really bad because we have an hour show to do today, but where do you go from here? How do you fix this?
I don't know the answer, to be honest. Like, I don't know where this team goes from here. I don't know how they fix this. And somebody on Twitter, I don't remember who, brought up a good point. And it was like, if Rodgers is saying that the energy was gone before the game even started, then why did they fire Robert Saleh? Because the rationale, the reason that they gave was that they fired him to provide a spark to the team, hoping that it would ignite a flame, hoping that Ulbrich would step in and everybody would rally behind him and that the energy would increase and the energy would be positive enough to start producing some wins. Instead, the energy is still flat somehow entering this game. So I don't really understand. It's like, listen, I was a proponent of firing Saleh. I think it was the right decision because if you were going to do it at the end of the year, you might as well do it now. Like if you were dead set on doing it, just get it over with, right? So I'm not complaining over the Jets making that decision. I'm not going to walk back my praise of it. But at the end of the day, they gave a specific reason as to why they did that. They said that they wanted to spark energy in this team. The energy is still lacking. So now they need to figure out, why is that the case? Where is the leadership on this team? Why is that lacking? How is the energy so flat entering a game, coming out of halftime, just all throughout those 4 quarters, just flat energy? It needs to be identified. What is the root cause of this problem?
Yeah, and like it feels like there's issues everywhere, and it goes all the way up top to ownership with Woody Johnson. Him meddling, I don't think does this team any favors. Although I will give him credit because I agreed with the decision to move on from Robert Saleh to trade for Devontae Adams and to work this out with Hassan Reddick. I understand like they were trying to spark the team, and clearly that didn't work with Saleh. But if you were going to be, if you're going to have a losing record anyway and move on from him after the year, what's the difference? Adams, I thought, was something that could make this offense better. And through the first quarter and a half of this game, it looked like that's what it was doing. But I don't think him meddling and getting involved is a good thing. I think the general manager is massively overrated by a lot of this fan base. They're ready to give still at this point, I feel like half the fan base is ready to give Joe Douglas an extension, even though he's 29 and 61 in 6 years and is on his way to a sixth straight losing season, in my opinion, unless they get things right and get it right quickly here. But based on what we've seen, I don't know how they're going 7-3 the rest of the way to get to a winning record. It seems impossible with how this team has looked. And then the players, for them to just, and Rodgers included in that, for them to just essentially, like I said, quit after the first sign of adversity. You have a 9-point lead, and then you still go into the half up 2 and getting the ball. And they were just so flat. And the defense quit too. I don't know, man. I slept on it. I'm not feeling any better this morning. And it's so frustrating because, as I said, and you don't have an answer. I know I don't have an answer either. I just don't know how you fix this, because clearly there's talent on this roster, but they don't play as a team. I really liked, I don't know if you saw this morning, Damian Woody had a rant on ESPN, and essentially he was saying, like, this is a talented roster, but they don't do anything as a team. They don't work together. There's not a good leadership in place, and it's really costing them. And it feels like that's right with how things have looked.
Yeah, it is right with how things have looked. And I think, you said it best, like, this team doesn't play as a team. I do see a lot of individuals out there on the field just trying to get things going, but there just doesn't seem to be any cohesion really on either side of the ball. It's most surprising to see defensively, though. This is a team with a ton of defensive talent, all pro level players, and just not getting the job done against, a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get that they made the quarterback change, and clearly it did spark something for them, and credit to Russell Wilson. He played a great game,
Yeah.
but I mean, come on. This was the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. They haven't been good all season long. To be their get right game when you're lauded as having this excellent Jets defense, that's embarrassing. And what we saw throughout that matchup, we didn't see them playing as a team. We saw a severe lack of cohesion on both sides of the ball. So I agree with your assessment in that regard. And I just think when you're looking at this Jets team, like we've both said, it's really hard to find the answer. How does this get fixed? I'm not exactly sure. But I also think, elephant in the room, can't beat around the bush any longer. What's up with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, this is not what we expected from him, this offense. And actually, I think that last night's game did a phenomenal job highlighting one key difference, because with Russell Wilson taking over that offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, what did we see differently for Pittsburgh? We saw a quarterback in more control of the offense, taking command and allowing his players to make more plays in space, making changes at the line of scrimmage and sparking something for his offense. That's what we saw. That was the big difference between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. And I also thought it was the big difference between, unfortunate to say, Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. I feel like Russell Wilson had so much control over that offense despite not playing the first 6 weeks of the season. He had control. He sparked something. He was making adjustments, and he was doing things on the fly that, frankly, I don't think we've seen Aaron Rodgers do this season. At least not enough. And that was something that we argued was going to be the big difference maker for this offense going into the year. We said that Zach Wilson didn't have the autonomy in the offense last year under Nathaniel Hackett. He didn't have the ability to control an offense, make those adjustments, and run things himself. So far this season, I haven't seen Aaron Rodgers really do those things either. When you have a 9-point performance versus the Denver Broncos, if you want to be in that GOAT conversation and say that, you are the man, you can run an offense, that doesn't happen. You don't have a 9-point performance versus the Broncos. You don't have a 15-point performance versus a great Steelers defense. And again, it's a great defense, but I just think last night's game perfectly highlighted that Aaron Rodgers is just not delivering on many of these promises. He isn't taking control of this offense and making things happen. And that, at the end of the day, end all be all, the Jets built this offense predicated on his ability to do exactly those things. When he's not doing them, that ultimately to me feels like why this team is faltering.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And on the Aaron Rodgers interceptions last night, on the 2 of them, the first one I thought, which really the first one changed the game, was an unnecessary risk throwing over the middle of the field. He looked off too on the first throw to Devontae Adams was, offline. And that's happened a few times with him, again, seemingly not on the same page with the receivers. The second one, kind of just goes back to the lack of focus and their good players not playing up to their standard. The ball hit Garrett Wilson in the chest. Like, you have to just have your hands catch the ball with your hands, man. Like, I don't know why he's so set on catching everything with his body, and then, interception gets returned to the one. They score, they go up 8, and the game felt like insurmountable at that point even, and there was so much time left. There was a quarter and a half of football left at that point, but you just knew how this thing was going. And, whether it's, Rodgers, and he deserves blame in this. He did not play good enough to win. But Garrett Wilson had a bad mistake. He also had 2 false start penalties. Tyron Smith is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's unplayable right now. He is absolutely horrendous. And you took someone 11th overall in Olu Fashanu, and, like, I don't know, sooner rather than later, I think you got to get him on the field, because, like, Tyron Smith, again, is just not putting competitive reps out there and is getting beat by speed over and over and over again.
Yeah, and we talked about the offensive line going into the year as being potential kryptonite or potential saving grace of this offense, right? Like, it could be the make or break unit, like it often is for most NFL teams. But right now, it's not making; it's absolutely breaking. Like, we are not seeing what we expected to see. And I know that injuries play a part in this. Players get banged up, players get worn down. All of those things true, but the adversity needs to be fought through. And I do wonder, Matt, what you think about potentially the scheme hurting the offensive line, right? Because they did make those upgrades up front, right? They added talent, and that talent just doesn't look like it's translating to the field. Those inconsistencies, like you mentioned, Tyron Smith getting beat with speed. Do you think that any element of that is related to the fact that the Jets offense is, let's face it, nonchalant, mundane, whatever you want to call it, lack of motion, things like that? Sometimes those things mitigate pressure. They make it easier for your offensive line. But the lack of those things, do you think that's also causing some of the pressure to get through?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think so. It's again, it just feels like everything, but that is part of the compounding problem. We did see, at least with Downing, them use a little bit more motion. I think they got away from it in last night's game. I don't have the numbers offhand, but just eye test wise, they ran a lot more motion against Buffalo than they did against Pittsburgh. And it's still shocking too that they can't get anything going on the ground consistently. Like, Brees Hall is a very good running back, and that's another, a guy who has talent, but, like, as a team, they average under 4 yards per carry again. And it goes back to the offensive line. And, I don't want to just use that as the cop out. It's not fair to say, oh, poor offensive line, they can't do anything, because we've seen teams with bad offensive lines be able to scrape things together and fight, but they look so out of it. I want to pull up the numbers here on the rushing. As a team, the Jets had 15 carries for 54 yards, which is not going to cut it.
Yeah, not going to cut it at all. And I mean, listen, I think that Brees Hall is a tremendous talent. We've said it all year long that he hasn't necessarily looked himself. He made some real spark plays, though, in the receiving game. But as a rusher, just overall, this rushing attack has looked dead on the table all season long. Like, that's how it feels. They're just not getting anything going. And I don't know exactly what the solution is. I don't know if we're blaming the scheme, if we're blaming the offensive line or the running backs themselves. Maybe I'm not watching closely enough, and that's why I don't have the answer. But I don't know what the answer is for, like, any of these questions with the Jets, because none of this makes sense to me. We talked all off season long. I said that this could be an 11-win team. This could be like a historically good New York Jets team. I really felt confident in that. When you look at this roster on paper, you look at this depth chart, I mean, just tremendous talent all across the board. We've got a stacked receiving core. Devontae Adams now even added to the mix. You got good players on the offensive line that you added this offseason. Superstar running back. Quarterback is a future Hall of Famer. Then look at the defensive line and all the talent there. Obviously, Hassan Reddick being absent the first 6 weeks was detrimental. However, Will McDonald is second in the NFL with the most sacks. So how detrimental really was it? I mean, you still had great pass rushers coming through, and you have great linebackers, and you have all that talent in the secondary. So you look all across the board at the talent on this team. There's really not a clear-cut answer as to why they're underperforming. The talent is there. They made a coaching staff change. Maybe the coaching still is the problem. I'm sure that's an element to it. But at the end of the day, I think it's probably just a culture thing, because that's all that I can really chalk it up to. I can't pinpoint what the problem is. But when you're talking about that rushing attack, it really doesn't make sense to me because it's not just Breece Hall in the backfield. Now it's also Braylon Allen. They've got two talented running backs. So this whole thing is just confusing. I really just don't know how to pinpoint what's wrong with this team.
No, and also like I know that there's a lot of fan bases around the league kind of like victory lapping the Jets being bad and saying, like, see, I told you so. This isn't gonna, it wasn't gonna work and this and that. But I still don't blame Jet fans for being excited going into this year. Because as you just laid out, there is talent on this roster. The Jets somehow won 7 games last year with all 3 of their quarterbacks passing for a combined 11 touchdowns. Rodgers has 10 and hasn't played well, but he is more than likely going to tie or eclipse the Jets' total passing touchdowns next week in week 8. And it's still not enough. And granted, the defense got worse, but you have like all these guys and all these talented veterans who are just not playing up to their level. And then like self-inflicted wounds with these pre-snap penalties and all these mistakes. It doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find words here, but I just don't know. It's so easy to come on, or not so easy, but more often than not, it's easy to come on here and say like, oh, the Jets or Giants lost because X, Y, and Z, and here's what they need to do to improve and get back on track. But they've lost 4 games in a row and lost all 4 in very different ways. 3 of them were tight games against, Denver and Minnesota and the Buffalo Bills, a few, snaps here or there, but they had a 9-point lead and were driving with the ball looking like they were going to get points before the half. And then are outscored 31-0 after that. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm repeating myself, but this gives me a team that quit and a team that, I don't know, like maybe they do need to blow this up because I don't know how you fix this.
Yeah, and then I think, when you look ahead to the offseason, you have difficult conversations that you need to have regarding Aaron Rodgers and whether or not you're blowing up this team, who you're selling, who you're buying, right? Like all those things are going to become part of the question. But, I saw the weird stat today. ESPN Analytics says that the Jets still have like a 50% chance or some shit to make the playoffs, which I don't really understand. But I don't know. You do look at this schedule, and this is where I turn and I try and be a little bit more optimistic just to give Jets fans some hope. The Patriots should be a get-right game, right? Next week, you should be able to beat New England. You've got the Texans. That's a tough one. It's another primetime matchup, but it's Thursday night. Thursday night games, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe you sneak one out as the underdog. Then you've got the Cardinals, who've had their fair share of struggles. The Colts have their struggles. Then you have your bye week. Seahawks are beatable. Dolphins, Jaguars, Rams, Bills, and Dolphins all beatable. You do have winnable games down the stretch of the season. So, again, I know it's doom and gloom and it's a really ugly Sunday and it's an ugly Monday morning at 2-5 with 4 straight losses. Like I get all these things, but I want to provide a little ray of optimism and just kind of point out over the next few weeks, you've got a couple more tough matchups, but out of that bye week, it's pretty much all winnable. So perhaps you stumble your way into that week 12 bye. You try and pick up 2 more wins on your way there. Then you're 4-7, I think. And maybe you make some sort of run and you end up becoming a wild card team. I don't know. I guess it's maybe possible if you're able to come out of that bye with some fire lit underneath you. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be really tough though. Like no matter what you could say, a 2-5 hole is one that's almost insurmountable.
I appreciate the optimism there. I'm at the point they just got to show it to me now. Like there are theoretically winnable games on the schedule, but they just have to put it all together and show me. Let's get into the comments here. Peter S says, I'm homesick and the Jets' own sickness isn't making you any better. Hope you feel better, Peter. Says, so much talent for so little results. It might be time to blow it up after the season ends. It kind of just goes into what we were just saying there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, so far out into the offseason, you're going to have to see where this team is picking in the draft as well before you make that decision. But I mean, the future outlook of this team does not look completely bright.
I think Marley brings up a good point. Jets got out coached. They did. And that was one of my fears when I saw this game on the schedule, even when, before the year started. Going on the road and playing in Pittsburgh's hard thing to do. But in the preview, even I said it, the Steelers find ways to win games every single week with talent deficiencies on that roster, where the Jets find ways to lose with a lot of talent. And that's on coaching to me.
No, that's exactly what it is, and it's true. I mean, listen, I've said it so many times. I think this roster is just incredibly talented. Like I think pound for pound, talent for talent, depth chart for depth chart, it is among the best in the NFL. And when you're not winning games with a roster like this, I don't know what else you can point to except for coaching. And credit to Mike Tomlin, he is one of the greatest head coaches in NFL history, truly is. So you do expect your team to get out coached to some extent every time you face the Steelers. But when you've got that level of talent, you don't expect the losses to look like that, and you do expect to put up at least a fight. Jets didn't have a lot of fight in that second half, and so that's where you really start to ask some bigger questions.
I'm with you. Aaron says, "You mean New Jersey football is a joke?" Canada doesn't count, man. Western New York, anything above, I don't know. What do we want to set the line? Westchester. It's not. It's different. It's different. Sorry, I know you like to get everyone likes to get that joke off, but Bills play just as far away from Buffalo than the Jets do from New York. So
Chicago Bears don't play in Chicago. Washington Commanders don't actually play in Washington, D.C. It's true for nearly both Los Angeles teams play in Inglewood. So it's true for every team. No team is actually in the city that they represent. It's incredibly. Miami Dolphins play in Hollywood, Florida. There's so many examples of this. I always find that ridiculous and just annoying. Do you want them to build this massive stadium in the middle of New York City and tear down all these different affordable housing units? No. So you got to put it over New Jersey where there's nothing else. It's just the reality of it. So I don't know. Yeah, that one always frustrates me.
That does. How about that? This might be the plan here to fix New York football. Fold both franchises, combine the rosters, and you may get a 9-win team that way.
He might. Yeah, maybe. That might be the way. Maybe they just become the Big Apple Blitz. They can use our name, and we're no longer the New York Giants or the New York Jets. We are just the Big Apple Blitz, which actually is a pretty cool name for a team. Maybe. I don't know. I guess I'm with it.
I don't want to. I have to bring this comment up because I genuinely do not want to hear from a Patriots fan today. It says, "Don't cry. Robert Kraft is the cheapest owner in football. He got Gerard Mayo for peanuts, and he doesn't even have to pay Van because Cleveland's paying. We got the worst coaching staff in football." You have seen your team win 6 championships. I don't give a fuck about Robert Kraft being cheap. I hope they never win a game again because you've got more than enough football happiness in your lifetime. You are realizing what football fandom is really like in the real world. So I have less than zero sympathy for the New England Patriots and their struggles.
I can't feel bad for the Patriots. And you know what? I double can't feel bad because the Patriots have my desired QB1 for the New York Giants. So you can fuck right off with your Patriots complaints. You saw all those Super Bowls and you have Drake May. So even if you don't like the coaching staff, you know you have a bright future and a really talented young quarterback who, despite the bad coaching staff and lack of talent around him, is still making plays. And look at the Giants. Year 6 of Daniel Jones, all the talent around him right now, and he's not making plays. So I don't want to hear any of those complaints from Patriots fans.
That's about all I could stomach on the Jets right now. They want to transition and get into the Giants here in the second half of this show, which this convo is not going to be much better here, Anthony.
No, it's not. At least we do have one moment where I felt happiness for the first time in a long time as a Giants fan. And that was when I saw Drew Lock enter the game. At least I felt like this team might do something to make a change. They might try to turn things around. They might actually look at the problems that plague this team and say, hey, we got to see if we can turn this thing around. I mean, look at the stat line from Daniel Jones. 14 for 21, 99 yards, 4.7 average. And, fans will be like, Jalen Hurts only had 114 yards. Look at the rating difference. Look at the average distance. You're talking 4.7 average versus 8.1 average. You're talking that 1 touchdown plus another 1 rushing, another 2 rushing versus 0 touchdowns from Daniel Jones. Oh, he didn't throw an interception. Yeah, well, he might as well have because the ball didn't move regardless. This is my thing with Daniel Jones. Giants fans say, well, at least he doesn't turn the ball over. You can win games. He plays winning football. No, he doesn't. Winning football is throwing interceptions. This is a thing that always pisses me off. And I don't know if it's because listen, I play in this flag football league every week. And if I don't throw interceptions, my team gets mad at me. They say, fucking rip that ball downfield. Give us a chance. Daniel Jones, I'm sure that Malik Neighbors feels the same way. I would rather Daniel Jones throw 3 interceptions and 3 touchdowns than 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. At least when you're throwing those picks, you're trying to make something happen. You're ripping the ball downfield and hoping that it breaks your way. And sometimes it does. We've seen plays where the ball is thrown downfield, gets tipped up, and boom, somehow caught by the receiving team, touchdown. The Giants don't have those plays. They never happen for us because Daniel Jones doesn't take those chances. I mean, hell, I don't even understand how he gets so many excuses for it, because I remember the days when Eli Manning was the quarterback. There's this one play that sticks out like a sore thumb versus the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. Eli Manning had no business throwing this ball into the coverage that he did. Double coverage with Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman, of all people. Cam Chancellor jumps up. Richard Sherman jumps up, gets his hand on it. Somehow, some way, the ball just floats. Victor Cruz one-hand catches it and runs for a 75-yard touchdown. That play isn't even possible with Daniel Jones at quarterback, because if he saw double coverage, that ball's never getting thrown in the direction of his best playmaker. Sometimes you just have to say, fuck it, throw it down there, and hope that it goes your way. Daniel Jones doesn't do that. He takes sacks. He holds onto the ball too long. He throws it out of bounds. He only throws it in coverage when it's got 0 chance. He's just a bad quarterback, and I'm so sick and tired of pretending like he isn't. Like, I'm tired of sitting here being like, oh, offensive line didn't do him favors, the dropped passes. A lot of these dropped passes the Giants fans complain about, the ball is a tick or two too late. That's why it gets dropped. Or it's outside of the catch radius, and we're talking about a player jumping backwards and breaking their momentum, and it's never in stride. Like, everything that you want to take, all these little minute details that go into playing quarterback, they're just not there for Daniel Jones. He doesn't make a difference. He does not push the needle. All he does is help this team falter at the end of the day. So I don't know. My bad. I just kind of jumped in and totally went for the throw to Daniel Jones there. Just went on a quick rant and tangent. But listen, it's pent up aggression that I've had for 7 weeks now. And I try and let it out here and there slowly throughout the weeks. But I'm at the point now, he got benched for the 4th quarter. I don't have any reason to hold back anymore. He's a bad quarterback, and I'm sick and tired of pretending that he isn't.
I agree with everything you just laid out there. It's the ultra conservative, hold on to the ball too long, taking the sacks. And I get it. Like, you're without your best offensive lineman by far, and your left tackle, the blindside pass protector. But it that can't be the excuse anymore when you've seen this in every single iteration of the Giants team that they put out there over the years. Yes, other things need to be better, but for most of this year, the offensive line has actually been pretty good, and he is still unable to score. The stat you gave us where he doesn't have any home touchdowns in like 2 years is unfathomable. It really is unbelievable that they just cannot find a way into the end zone. And like the stat line is just, it's ugly. You cannot win that way. And I wanted to ask you, like, do you think they ride with Drew Lock this next week here? Like, is that what they're going to do? Or are they going right back to Daniel Jones?
Brian Dable said that Daniel is still the starting quarterback and he's going to continue to start. I don't believe him. I don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility that he makes a decision midway through the week and changes his mind and Drew Lock is the starter. Because again, like, look at the difference in quarterback play around the league. I mean, you just said it right there. You can't use the left tackle being out as an excuse. And I'll give you added fuel to that. Jalen Hurts didn't have his left tackle. His left tackle was out of the lineup due to an injury. And you know what I saw? I saw him stand into the pocket while his blind side collapsed and he got hit making this throw. And it was a 45-yard rope down the left sideline to A.J. Brown for a touchdown. Every single week, quarterbacks are handed adversity. They're handed problems. And what do? Solve those problems. Jalen Hurts, he's not a great player. I don't think. He definitely hasn't been for the majority of the season, but he was handed problems and he freaking solved them. He made plays and he led his team to win. The Giants, on the other hand, one of these players goes out of the lineup. Oh, well, we lost last week. We didn't have Malik Neighbors, and then Andrew Thomas was playing injured. Oh, well, this week we don't have Andrew Thomas. You know that the season's over. I don't care about these excuses anymore. I never have. There's always been excuses. And again, I don't see where it comes from. I don't understand how the bar of the standard for quarterback play has been lowered so much in New York, because I remember the 2 decades of Eli Manning, and all of the problems that he had when we were talking about how Kevin Gilbride was a terrible offensive coordinator and we needed a change. Ben McAdoo was the worst thing that ever happened to this team, but the Giants still scored points. Daniel Jones has not done those things. Eli Manning was a truly great quarterback, somebody that's worth building around, somebody that when there is adversity, when he has lack of protection in front of him, when his playmakers are injured, he's still going to find ways to get your team into the end zone. Daniel Jones doesn't do that, evidenced by his streak of no home touchdowns. I don't understand that statistic because even if you don't try to score touchdowns, you could probably score a touchdown, right? Like it's not that hard to get one ball into the end zone, and Daniel Jones just can't do it. And it doesn't make any sense to me. So find a quarterback who can. There's one on this roster. You know what his name is? It's Tommy DeVito. And again, I'm not going to sit here and realistically be like, oh, Tommy DeVito is the future of this team. He truly is the quarterback one. He's QB1 of Big Apple Blitz. We all know that. But realistically, he is a backup quarterback. But you know what he did last year as a backup quarterback, Matt? He provided a spark. This team had zero going for them. Everything was over. It was dead. Lack of energy all across the board. Tommy DeVito stepped in there, and you know why he found that immediate success? You know why he created that spark? He played like he had nothing to lose. Daniel Jones, he doesn't have anything to lose either, but he still plays like he has everything to lose because he's got the starting job, he's got this contract and all this other BS. I guess he has a lot to lose. But you know what? Tommy DeVito was just like, man, I can go out there and I can totally flame out, and then, all right, my career is over, and I didn't really have one anyway. But if I go out there and I rip a few deep passes and win a game or two, I might have a long-term career in the NFL. He went out there, he did that, and now he's going to be a backup for a long time. So I just need a quarterback who's not afraid to be in this lineup and see if it makes a difference. Because right now, it's exactly what Mike Tomlin did. He had a winning quarterback back there with Justin Fields, 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. Still made the change because he wanted to see if it would spark something. He wanted to know what he had on his roster. Do I have something that will yield more wins for me throughout the rest of the year? The Giants need to do the exact same thing. Maybe you believe that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on your roster. Maybe Tomlin believed at the time that Justin Fields is the best quarterback on the roster, but find out if there's somebody better because you don't have anything to lose. Just give it a try, see if a spark can be provided.
Yeah, that's kind of what Justin right here is saying in the comments. Says Daniel Jones missing his blindside protector, just like the Eagles did yesterday. Meanwhile, the Eagles scored and whooped us is inexcusable. Get Tommy Cutlets in here. At least he has heart, which is true. And that's all you could really ask out of your team is to show that they care. And it felt like both the Jets and the Giants did not show that yesterday. I know we both changing gears slightly here, but I know we both have been optimistic on DeAndre Banks, but what did you make on some of his effort in this game?
Effort has been a problem for Deontay Banks so far this season. He had a really bad moment against the Dallas Cowboys that we all remember. Gave up on the CeeDee Lamb touchdown. He did it again yesterday. Jalen Hurts running to the sideline, didn't even attempt to tackle him. I wouldn't be shocked if he's benched next week just because an example needs to be set here. You know, they got to make an example out of that lack of effort. It's disrespectful to the other players on this team who are out there and they're trying their asses off. Like I saw on that exact same play where Deontay Banks let Jalen Hurts continue to run. I saw Bobby Okereke dive, face plant, try his absolute best to get Jalen Hurts out of bounds. You just can't be doing that. It's unacceptable. I love Deontay Banks, think he's a great player, and I think he's a great person as well, somebody who really wants to be great, but you can't be great unless you try every single play, no matter the score, to be great. Otherwise, you're just going to be mediocre. You're just going to be middling. And I don't want to see him middle. I just want to see him actually become the player that he's got the potential to be. And right now it's not happening. So something needs to change. And yeah, I think he probably gets benched. I would bench him probably for the first quarter next week and then see, maybe you throw him out there after that.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the move here. And again, I like Deontay. I think he's a good player, but it's just, you can't have that effort show up on film. And like everyone, the whole team, every guy on the roster sees that. And like, I don't know. I just feel like it sets a bad precedent if that's the effort level that you're going to give. And he needs to be held accountable for it. I think, anyone could admit that, even the biggest Banks fans out there. It's unreal. And I keep going back to, or I'm thinking in my head rather, the comment that Justin just said with making the comparison between Daniel Jones and Justin Fields. Justin Fields has been very, very criticized by his own fan base this year, and he was still able to find his way into the end zone 3 times in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, and Justin has a couple more great comments. Like you said, even the biggest Deontay Banks fan. I might actually be that guy. I might be the biggest Deontay Banks fan, and I think we're all in agreement here. But I like this comment from Justin saying he thinks that Deontay Banks is livid. It's unacceptable, but his offense doesn't give him hope. His effort has to be there, but he understands the frustration. I completely agree. This Giants defense is not the reason the team lost. Yeah, the Eagles scored 28 points. But I mean, in the second half of the game, the ball just wasn't moving offensively. It is so difficult as a defense when your offense is going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. You're just getting right back on the field, right back on the field. You're gassed. You don't want to play anymore. You know that your offense isn't going to score. So what's the point in even going out there and playing defense? I totally get it. Deontay Banks has every right to be frustrated, but that isn't how you show it. It just isn't the way that you show it. You got to put in the effort like everybody else is. And to be completely fair and honest, I mean, it wasn't just Banks. Banks is going to get singled out because his was the most glaring instant of a lack of effort. But if you throw on the offensive side of the ball, you watch the tape there, Neighbors took some plays off too. And I don't blame him. He knew when he wasn't the first read, he sometimes wasn't running his routes. I spent a lot of time this morning watching some of the all 22. He gave up on plays, and it's just something that's going to happen when your quarterback isn't spreading the ball, when your quarterback isn't going through the reads and the offense isn't scoring points. Everybody gives up. It's just something that happens. That's why they needed to make a spark. That's why they needed to pull Jones from the game and put in Drew Lock. And that's why Daniel Jones cannot be the starter anymore going forward, because not just the offensive players, the defensive too, the team is giving up on Jones. And when the team gives up, when the head coach loses the locker room, that is when the head coach loses his job. So if you're Brian Daboll and you want to be the head coach of the New York Giants and you don't want to lose your job, the only way that you can save your job now is to make a quarterback change. And I really hope he's not hard-headed enough. I hope that he understands that. He makes the change. He saves his job, because I do think he's a good head coach. I think he's a good person, good head on his shoulders, all those things true. But something has to change. Daniel Jones is going to get another head coach and GM fired if that head coach isn't wise enough to make a necessary decision.
G-Man 2011 also points out Eagles lost their right guard during the game too. Kai Becton goes down, shocker, with an injury. But again, where's the excuses there? They find a way to win, and we're critical of Nick Sirianni and the job that he does, and he's kind of just a jerk. But we see teams around the league just find ways to win these like games ugly, and the Jets and Giants just cannot figure out how to get a win on a Sunday, Monday, or Thursday. It's unreal.
I mean, listen, ugly wins just don't exist for the Giants anymore. Ugly losses, that's for sure, but they can't grind out ugly wins. It never happens. Whenever they're close and they need a play, I mean, and I attribute that to bad quarterback play. Quarterbacks find ways to win. I mean, I think the best example of that right now in the NFL is from the NFL's best team. They are not winning because of Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. He has a 6-8 TD-INT ratio on the season. He threw 2 interceptions and 0 touchdowns last night, right? But that is the perfect example of he's not even playing his best game, but when they need a play, he finds a way to make it happen. That play yesterday where he ran almost out of bounds and then up the sideline, big gain, sparked a scoring drive for them. The great quarterbacks of this game, even when they're playing their absolute worst football, they're having their worst season, still find ways to make those 1 to 2 small plays despite all of the trouble around them to spark a win. Daniel Jones doesn't do that. And listen, all across the league, like you said, we are seeing a bunch of teams with a bunch of players out of the lineup due to injuries, bad coaching around them. All of this stuff is true. Not just for Daniel Jones. He's not the only guy that has to deal with this shit. Everybody has to deal with it. He's just the only guy that can't rise above it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. He's the only one who can't rise above it. I want to pull this up. I know it's not going to make you feel any better, but I think it goes into the conversation that we have. And now PFF isn't perfect, right? Like we can all admit that PFF is flawed. But if you look at their pass blocking grades, it looks like the Giants' offensive line, or at least their pass blocking, wasn't a huge issue for them in this game, but still 7 sacks, 6 of them were 8 sacks in the game, 7 for Daniel Jones. He's finding his way into pressure, and that is the recipe for disaster for this team.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it, Daniel Jones is responsible, if you go into PFF's advanced stats, He's been responsible for 17 of his pressures this season and 5 of his sacks. So, I mean, that tells you even more there for the context. I pulled that up as well. And well, I don't think that the offensive line necessarily played poorly. I was watching, again, the All-22 today, and I saw a lot of plays where Jones has time in the pocket to get the ball out. It might have to be quick, maybe you have to throw the hot read. Maybe you can only get through your first 2 progressions, but he doesn't even do that. He locks into that first read, holds on to it, and then takes a sack. Like, there weren't that many instant losses for the offensive line where it was like, okay, the pressure's there. There was no chance for that play to happen. There was a couple. It's not like that didn't happen yesterday, but for the most part, a lot of these sacks were standing, I'm waiting. Okay, now I'm taking a sack. You got to get the ball out of your hands. You got to throw it into coverage, tight windows. Daniel Jones just doesn't do those things. And you know who does do those things, though? Tommy DeVito does those things. Like, he held on to the ball a shit ton last year. That was his biggest problem. He took so many sacks, but he also threw the ball into really tight windows, took chances, and sparked some plays. And you know who else is known for doing exactly that? Drew Lock. He stands in the pocket, takes hits, and he fires the ball in the tight windows. He throws a ton of picks. He has more interceptions in his career than touchdowns. And this might sound insane. That's what I want from a quarterback right now. I miss New York Giants quarterbacks throwing interceptions. That sounds insane, but you got to think about the logic behind it. I miss having a quarterback that actually tried to force the ball into windows, tried to make things happen. I am very tired of watching the sacks get taken in clean pockets. I'm tired of watching the ball get thrown away. I'm tired of seeing plays get given up on in an effort to keep the ball out of the hands of the opponent. I'd rather see plays where the ball is being thrown into the hands of the opponent, trying to spark something, trying to give your playmakers a chance to get the football. Right now, the Giants playmakers don't even have a chance to touch the ball on most of these plays because it's not even going their way. So I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I want to see Giants quarterbacks throw picks again. I want to see the ball get thrown downfield. So whether it's Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito, somebody else I know could spark this offense.
They got to make a change, and we'll have more on Thursday's show. We'll preview. The Giants will be going up against this team that the Jets just played in the Steelers, which is not going to be an easy matchup for them. Jets have the Patriots, which is a game that they should win, but as we discussed, there's no guarantees with this team because we have just no idea what version of them we are going to get on a week-to-week basis. Any final thoughts to close us out here on this disgusting loser Monday?
No, man, I just, next week's game is going to be ugly. We've got a lot to talk about on Thursday going into that one, but, Giants Monday night versus Pittsburgh, we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping, honestly, Matt, that Thursday morning we do the show and we are reacting to Wednesday afternoon news that Brian Daboll changed his mind and Drew Lock is the starter. Like, I can't do it anymore. I cannot stand watching Daniel Jones play football.
Good news. The Jets season is saved. Hassan Reddick has just reported to the facility and reached an agreement on an adjusted contract. Hallelujah.
Yay.
Yep. Lovely. Guys, that'll do it for us on this one. Sorry for the downer of an episode, but that's the vibe of New York football right now. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He is Anthony. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you next time.